Hello and welcome back. In this lesson, I would like to go over a document reference relationship in MongoDB. You can use a document reference to create a new relationship, rather than embedding the child document into the parent document like we did throughout this course. For example, we have different bands, and we have different events that they performed at. All of the event information was embedded inside of their collection as a document. If we wanted to create a new band, let's say we assign that new band a band ID. We can then have members of that specific band be a part of our musician collection. Each musician will have their own ID, but each musician will also reference the band ID. This is how we will create a document reference relationship. And by doing this, we will know that those musicians are now part of that specific band based on the ID. Let us do this together now in MongoDB. First, let us create a new band. db period bands period insert open parenthesis open curly bracket. Let us assign an ID of 4. Let us give this band the name of Crave. Close in curly bracket, close in parenthesis, hit enter, and we have a successful insert. Now, if we look at the band table, the band collection, db period bands period pretty parenthesis period pretty find. We are then given a list of all of the different bands that exist within our collection, and you can see that the last band on the list is ID 4, the band name Crave. Now let us create different musicians and assign them to be part of this band, and we will do that by creating new musicians with their IDs, but then we will reference this ID of 4 as a band ID. This way, all musicians will have their musician ID, but they will also have a band ID. This is almost like assigning a primary key and a foreign key in a relational database. Let us create the new musician now. To create a new musician, we will say db period musicians period insert open parenthesis open curly bracket. Let us assign an ID of 9, because if you can recall, we have musicians in our collection from 1 to 8. So let's continue with 9. Let us give this musician a name of Tammy Lee. Let us also say that this musician or skill is a vocalist. And now we need to assign this musician a band ID. And the band ID should match the same ID that we give the band that this musician is a part of, which is 4. A band ID of 4. Close in curly bracket, close in parenthesis. So we are creating a new insert in the musicians collection. ID 9, name Tammy Lee, instrument vocals, a band ID of 4. And by assigning this band ID for this musician, we are linking the ID back to the original band, who has the same ID, band name Crave. Therefore, we are creating a document relationship. Hit enter, and we have one successful return. Let us do this a few more times. Hit the up arrow and backspace. Let us now do ID 10, name, let us say Rick Miller, who plays the drums. Band ID 4. DB musician, insert ID 10, name Rick Miller, instrument drums, band ID 4, close in curly bracket, close in parenthesis, hit enter, and we have a second successful insert. Let's do this again. Hit the up arrow and backspace or delete. Let's make this band ID 11. Name. Let us think of another name. Let's say Jess Smith. Instrument. Guitar. Band ID 4. Close in curly bracket, close in parenthesis. Hit enter. And this was also successful. Let us do one more. Number 12, ID 12. Name. Ezra Clark. Ezra Clark, instrument. Bass. Band ID 4, curly bracket, close in parenthesis, hit enter, and we have a successful return. Now let us look at the musician collection to verify that all of these were successfully inserted. We already know that they were successfully inserted, but let us view them anyway. Using the command db period musicians period find parentheses, hit enter, and now we have 4 additional musicians starting from ID 9 to ID 12, but each one of these musicians have a particular ID. They have a band ID of 4, which reference the band. If we use the command db period bands period find within parentheses and curly brackets ID 4, it matches the band name Crave, who has an ID of 4. Therefore, we have now created a document relationship. This relationship is a relationship between band and the members of the band. The musicians have an ID that references back the band, and the band has an ID of 4. They both share this same ID. In the next video, we will continue by learning how to create a query to look up information based on this relationship. I will see you then. Thank you.